Welcome to Talk on the Pod, the podcast where we delve into the remarkable journey of the Takim Foundation's community, who are showcasing the best of the Arab world and paving the way for a brighter future. I'm your host, Andrea. In today's episode, we're joined by Nadine Chakar, a leading force in global financial markets and the driving visionary behind the digital asset evolution at DTCC. As Managing Director and Global Head of Digital Assets at DTCC, Nadine's work focused on integrating cutting-edge technologies into legacy financial markets, striving for a future where digital assets seamlessly coexist with traditional finance. In this episode, we'll explore Nadine's journey from the financial world's past to its future, focusing on how digital assets and blockchain technology are transforming markets. We'll dive into the impact of tokenization, the role of regulation in a decentralized financial system, and how the Middle East is emerging as a global leader in fintech innovation. We'll also hear about her unique leadership philosophy, which has earned her recognition as one of American bankers' most powerful women in finance. So sit back and join us as we unpack the future of finance with Nadine Chakar. Nadine, welcome to Talk on the Pod.
Thank you so much, Andrea, for having me.
Great to have you with us today. I would love to kick us off maybe with a quick snapshot of the industry of finance. The history of finance is a story of evolution from barter system to paper money and centralized bank to electronic payments. Each transformation has been met with both excitement and resistance. Today, as we navigate the push towards digital assets and decentralization, especially with blockchain technology, we find ourselves yet at another inflection point in financial history. You've had an incredible career spanning global markets, financial services, and digital assets. What have been the biggest shifts that you've witnessed so far?
So financial services is, as you mentioned, a very, very dynamic environment. And pretty much for every decade that I have been in this industry, there's been very big moments, whether it's been the introduction of electronic and algorithmic trading to more, data-centric type of services. And as you mentioned today, blockchain technology, we also are starting to see the percolation of AI within the financial services. And listen, every shift brings a lot of excitement with it, but we're all human, and there's always a little bit of concern about, am I still relevant? Am I still gonna? But what we've seen, especially in the U.S., like these introductions have been amazing. They've helped maintain the health and the competitiveness of the U.S. capital markets. And with every shift, there's opportunities, there's challenges, and that's why we all have a job. So it makes it pretty interesting.
So as Managing Director and Global Head of Digital Assets at DTCC, which is the backbone of post-trade infrastructure for U.S. capital markets, you are in a unique position to bridge the old and the new. How do you see this next phase of financial evolution unfolding, and what excites you most about this transition?
So, like you said, DTCC is the premier post-trade processor in the United States, and we do have an enviable position in the U.S. because we only have one post-trade provider. Where you look all over the world, it tends to be a little bit more fragmented. And DTCC has been a leader in technology. Last year, we moved the industry to a T+1 settlement cycle with absolutely no issues whatsoever. As I look now at this new evolution of digital technology, I'm very excited about the trilogy of blockchain, tokenization, as well as AI, and how they converge. And this is also an evolution that we've seen the retail side of the house try really take the lead here and move it forward. And now, since a couple of months ago, we've seen more enthusiasm around institutional investments. But with institutional investment, you're talking very large scale investments, and you need a more robust infrastructure to be able to sustain those investments, to ensure that they're secure, they're resilient, and interoperable. And this is where DTCC comes in. So part of my remit and that of the team has been to work with the entire industry. What's unique about DTCC is we're owned and governed by our participants. We've got a very trusted place in the industry, so we don't compete with our clients. clients. And we also have extremely good relationships with our regulators. So we are in a unique position to bring everybody together to try to figure out common ways to work together and try to foster better collaboration, which will lead us to adoption. And that is the very special bridge that we play. And then the last thing to remember is it took us, 50 years to get to where we are today. It will take us a bit more time to get to an environment that's truly digital. And for a period of time, we're going to have the old and the new sort of work together. And I believe one of the missions of DTCC as well is to try to find a common ground, if you will, between digital and traditional technologies, and sort of try to treat them the same to the extent that we can. So it's a big remit. We're very excited about it, and we're making very good progress day by day.
I would love to zoom in on this trifecta that you mentioned. How do you see it reshaping those traditional financial systems, and what are the benefits, the opportunities in facilitating more efficient markets?
So to be very, crude about it, it's better, faster, and cheaper, right? And that is at that high level. But when you start to dig down a little bit deeper, blockchain, for example, provides a level of transparency which is unique. So being able to have immutable records, being able to have that golden record, that facilitates a lot when you look at reconciliations, disparate records, and so on. The tokenization is the digital representation of these securities now that operate on these blockchains. And what's nice about tokenization is you can fractionalize those tokens. That's what they're called, which makes some investments a lot more accessible to normal investors. Not all of us can afford the very high price tag to be able to get into private equity or real estate. Being able to fractionalize democratizes investments to a certain extent. And I think the advent of AI and the power of data that comes with it now allows people to, and this is where you start to see the partnership between technology. Let technology do what it's best at, and then the human mind really shaping strategy and direction. And when you combine that all together, that just gives a different facet to financial services, which I find exciting.
And kind of open up new ways of doing things too.
It's new ways. So everything that we do, like the biggest mistake, and it will be a really missed opportunity if we just keep doing the same thing we do, just leveraging the new technology. So this new technology for the first time has given us the opportunity to totally reimagine how we do things. And listen, there'll be winners and losers. There'll be opportunities and challenges, but that's what makes what we do so fascinating. And with every generation of new technology, we just start to look at newer opportunities that are out there, and that only benefits the health of the capital markets and overall investors.
You sit on a very interesting position, and in that theme of bridging the old with the new, you talk about, this need to reimagine how things are, and it requires a big paradigm shift of how things have always operated. And when innovation comes into play, it's very hard to kind of snap out of our current systems and processes and really direct with a complete shift of how we're looking at processes and workflows. You've been in that field for long enough to see how it's traditionally worked. What would you say are some lessons that you would take into this new chapters and things that you would preferably leave behind?
That's a great question, and different people deal with that in different ways. I have, throughout my career, have done a lot of transformation work, and what I've found is a couple of things. The most important thing is to be able to communicate clearly a vision and an end objective. And what I've found, if people buy into your vision and that end state, they usually will come along for the ride with you and work with you to get there. So it's really important to get a coalition of the willing that embarks with you on that journey. I think that's one. So transparency in what you're trying to do. Listen, there's going to be people impacted. There's going to be processes impacted. But today we've got jobs we didn't have 10, 15 years ago. Yeah. So it's really keeping this learning mindset, being curious, looking at continuous improvement is important. don't try to boil the ocean. Take something tangible that you can change for the better. Communicate, celebrate those successes, I think is critical. And you'll see slowly but surely as you embark on that process, once you get closer to your destination and you look back, you'll be very fulfilled with the journey, and you leave the organization in a much better state that you took it over. And that's the purpose. But as they say, Rome wasn't built in a day, and it takes a lot of time, and it takes a village. But it's really important to be a leader where that you can paint a picture of the future, bring people along, communicate, and take the wins as they come. And there'll be setbacks as well. Learn from those and move forward. You can't just crumble at the first challenge, which is always challenging.
What's good doesn't come easy all the time.
Never does.
I want to zoom in towards more of the technical challenges of this process. I think there's definitely, the need to communicate a vision of what's yet to come, but we're kind of inheriting processes and regulations that have governed the financial systems and are pretty much set in stone. And it could be hard to convince people otherwise and lead to more fragmentation in workflows. Can you walk us through a bit about what does it take technically to get to this digital asset world everyone's working towards?
Well, the good news is nothing is cast in stone. Some stuff is harder than others, but you eventually get there. And listen, we've been at digital technology now for a couple of years. I want to say maybe 9 or 10, and we've had incremental success. And it's necessary. We can't have a big bang. I mean, when you look at the financial markets, we're talking about hundreds of trillions of dollars. Yeah. You can't just throw everything out and introduce the new. So, and to your point, it is a partnership between private and public regulators, investors, providers, market infrastructure. So it is, as I said earlier, it's a coalition of the willing, and we have to start baby steps here. We've got to try things out. So the past couple of years, we have really been testing out the technology. Does blockchain live up to its promises? Does tokenization live up to its promises? What are the downfalls of AI? And I think over the past couple of years, we have been experimenting with that. I think now we're at a point where we know the technology works, and we're starting to move into these processes. And regulators have been extremely supportive, but again, they have a hard job, right? They're trying to keep up with the onslaught of new technology, at the same time trying to keep the market safe and sound. Investor protection is critical, right? You don't want to introduce something that blows up the markets. And what we have found, and from even the different positions that I've held, is we start with the speaking points, right? You start to formulate a hypothesis, you test it, and then you sit down with the regulators and you start to look at proof points. And usually when you can show them that you'll get to at least a similar outcome with less risk, more efficiently, they usually will sit down and then work with you to adjust the regulations on where it needs to be. In our situation here, there are two streams, right? We have real world assets. So it is taking the stocks that you and I trade every day and try to tokenize those. Those have been less controversial because we've got, at least in the US, we've got pretty good rules on how to do that. There's been some murkiness here and there, but on average, we've had a roadmap on how to put it forward. But we've had an issue of there hasn't been an infrastructure that's been scalable enough to be able to take on that onslaught of assets. And that is the work that we have been doing along with the industry. Then you've got the crypto side. That's been a bit more challenging because to your point, we don't have rules that have been created for that. Now, for the past couple of months, there's been every single regulator, whether it's the OCC or the SEC or the CFTC, they're all setting up their roundtables, if you will, to take input from the industry and better understand how to adapt the laws that we have in our books. The White House has been taking a leadership role there as well. We've got, for the first time, a crypto and AI czar that's been working with the industry on trying to forge a path forward. And the last thing I'll say here is these instruments are global by nature, right? It's not once you issue a token, in theory, you could trade it in one market, settle it in another, and distribute it in a third. So the last piece that we are all working around is a slight harmonization of the rules and regulations around the world. But we're on this journey. We're started the journey. It will take a little bit of time, but we have to get it right. So if we're a little bit slow, that's okay, as long as we get it right at the end.
And for you, what would you label getting it right as? Is it cooperation? Is it alignment?
It's all of the above. At the end of the day, we've got to be able to take like the 100 trillion plus assets of the equity market, for example, in the U.S., and put it on rails if we can. I would like to see more native issuance now start to. Today, we issue something called a digital twin. So you take the actual security and then you create an image of that, which is a digital twin. That is the first step. I think the second step will be great to start to see more support for native issuance. So you issue it directly on blockchain versus going through the permutation. And again, if our hypothesis is accurate, you should be able to do it better, faster, and cheaper. And that only benefits the end investor, which is at the end of the day who we're all here to serve. So, but that is the ultimate goal. But there's, to your point, there's a lot that that we have to get right. And the last challenge here is we don't have a playbook. Like this technology has been so transformative and so disruptive that we've just got to find that balance. How do you extract the goodness of the technology while being compliant with investor protection rules, securities laws, and so on? But listen, there's a lot of really smart people in government, with the regulators, and in the industry working through that. And I'm very confident that hopefully before I retire, we'll have an infrastructure to support all that.
This is timely because as we sit on our interview today, tomorrow, March 7, the White House
That's right. Yep.
is hosting the first crypto summit, bringing together policy makers, industry leaders, and financial institutions to discuss, as you mentioned, this regulatory framework and the role of digital assets in the U.S. economy. Do you see this as a hopeful step towards more collaborations and clarity?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I think the fact that the White House and the government at large are taking a more active role in trying to advance the agenda is a massive good sign. I think the regulators as well, we have been meeting with them over the past couple of weeks as well. They're taking input. All that input comes together, and hopefully we'll have a more competitive regulatory framework here that would help the U.S. But a lot of people had been worrying about the competitive position of the U.S. in the crypto markets. I've never had that concern. I mean, I think we've always been a very innovative and creative industry here in the U.S. And now with a much closer partnership between the public and the private side, I think that will only skyrocket.
What is your hope for the outcome of the summit to be?
Listen, we've got to manage expectations. I don't think one summit is going to solve everything, but if people can put issues on the table and agree on a path forward, I think that's a big win in itself. And really giving the regulators the leeway, if you will, to start to regulate a framework that is clear and fair and applicable. Then I think, but I think this is the beginning, and I don't think it's a one shot. It's a fairly complicated topic, and I don't think one summit will solve it. But the fact that the summit is happening is amazing in itself.
The fact that there's a dialogue.
Oh, absolutely. And from the president of the United States onwards, like the level of interest and support that this industry is getting is very helpful. And we all need to work together, whether it's traditional finance or digital finance. We will need to work together to try to get to that end state. So there's still a lot of wood to chop, but at least I think we've got every hope and expectation that we'll get to a good outcome.
In the spirit of talking about innovation, the evolution of financial systems has always been about balancing a right amount of innovation and then security and compliance. There's also an ongoing debate about how much those innovations are truly viable in the wake of how highly regulated markets. As we push towards those evolutions of financial systems, what aspects do you think should be preserved to create true resiliency
Well,
within those
I think
regulations?
that you just said it, right? Resiliency is going to be important. Scalability, security, investor
Hmm.
protection, KYC, AML, those are the bedrock of what we do. And, we may do them differently, but still the reason why we do them is still valid.
Hmm.
I think there's also a push towards decentralized finance, which also it's easier for the retail investor when you're in charge of your own
Yeah.
wallets, you're in charge of your own crypto or what have you. That is easier. Most of us act as a fiduciary, so it's what we've been dubbing now a new term, which is institutional DeFi, where you still need a little bit of intermediation in there. So finance is a little bit hard to have like very disruptive
Hmm.
innovation. It is more incremental innovation that goes in. But we've come a long way from like counting things on an abacus to be able to have real time information, real time evaluation that's there, and everything in between, from algorithmic trading and cryptocurrencies and so on. So it is. The industry has always been really good at looking at new ways of leverage, and that's why I love this business. It's
Hmm.
a combination of tech and finance that always go hand in glove, and the technology has been an enabler to a lot of this innovation. But it's been incremental innovation because, as I said, this is one area where
Yeah.
you just can't break it and then clean up after you and move on. There's a lot of people, livelihood and stakes are
Yeah.
are at stake. So we've got to be very responsible in how we innovate. And I think the industry has shown that leadership and consideration throughout the process.
You mentioned a very interesting point, which is the other side of the coin, the people being affected by all of those changes, both in a positive and negative way. As those innovations in the financial industry reshape economies and societies, we're entering a new era today driven by AI, artificial intelligence, as it is rapidly transforming the sector, but also reshaping traditional roles. Um, we can talk a bit about the opportunities those innovations present, but how can we, what message would you want to spread to professionals, entrepreneur businesses, um, who feel that they could be disrupted by this very innovation?
Listen, we're disrupted every day,
Hmm.
right? And this technology, whether it's AI or something else, remember, it's all human.
Yeah.
Humans have come up with that. So you could take two avenues, and my advice to everybody is like embrace it, learn about it, try to figure out how it makes your life easier, the life of people around you a lot easier, because it's not going to go away. It is going to permeate everything that we do. Especially AI is a tool that will be there, and then I think. We're still smart enough to figure out how do you leverage AI as a tool
Hmm.
to make better decisions, but you're still making the decision, better outcomes, and as professionals, we will find that balance between where you need a human push and drive versus where the machines could do routine work, and you supplement that. I know a lot of people are really worried that
Yeah.
someday, and maybe someday will come, that maybe there'll be less jobs for us and the machines will do things, but we have been you know we've been around for centuries and centuries, and my expectations is that will continue, where we will innovate into the next the next field. So I would again encourage people to embrace the change, and it's scary. Don't get me
Yeah.
wrong; it's easier said than done, but embrace the change. Get into a learning mindset. Learn everything that you can, and having a curious mind has always been the bedrock of a nation in self-preservation to a certain extent. So embrace the change, because either you're gonna master the change and come on top, or you're gonna get steamrolled by it. As they say, either get on the bus or get out of the way.
Yeah.
And I think that's what you'll see with that type of technology.
And it's sort of like how all innovation cycles come and go. And I think maybe this one has more of a larger impact across industries, impending a big paradigm shift in many processes. So
Listen, it depends on how you use it. I'll give you a good example. We're working on a big industry event coming out at the end of April, and I was actually in a coffee shop in Paris this past weekend, and I was thinking about like the presentation. So I got on one of the ChatGPT type of setup, and I put in a quote like, help me write a script pretend you're a director, help me write a script for a video that's like a 1 minute long video, right? And to my big surprise, like it took 30 seconds and like boom, it came out, right? And then I said, all right, help me turn that into a video. And the machine said, well, I can't do videos, but consider these apps. So I picked one of the app from the list, and I copy pasted what I put into the app, and I want to say 4 minutes by the time my espresso came in, I had a fully functioning video, music, narration, pictures. And I'm looking at this, like, listen, it wasn't perfect. Like we still need to do a lot of polishing and things like that. But that would have taken me 5 months of sitting with people, explaining what I wanted, taking cuts, bringing it back. For me, that's a massive value add because I finished my coffee and went back to my hotel, called the team. I'm like, hey, like I was so excited. I'm like, okay, I've got a path now on how we can move this stuff around. So you use it, and it was the first time I did it, right? Like it was an experimentation, and I was over the moon. It was awesome.
You get the time back.
I got the time back, and I don't have to have 10 meetings now. Now I can have one meeting with our creative team, show them what I want, and I have no doubt they're going to do a much better job than what I got from the app, but that gave them direction, right? And it saved me multiple hours of meetings. And now next time I see it, hopefully it'll be the polished product that I'm looking for.
It's like a co-editor to
it was awesome. It was like awesome.
I would love to shift this conversation to kind of the Middle East for a bit. Entrepreneurship and innovation is an integral part of the Middle East culture and history.
It's in our DNA.
And from the rise of ancient trade routes to the invention of financial systems that predate Western banking, there's one example, the Hawala system, an ancient informal method of transferring money that dates back to the 8th century, which was a crucial financial tool during the Silk Road trade routes. The system is merely based on trust and network without the physical movement of cash.
Sounds like blockchain.
So within that connection, reputation, relationships, and accountability to function effectively, and like you mentioned, this parallels with blockchains. As someone with Lebanese roots, can you talk a bit more about this legacy of entrepreneurship and innovation, and what can those, legacy systems teach us?
So like I said, it's in our DNA, right? And I think actually, if you go back, it goes at least the evidence of the Lebanese cultural and entrepreneurial mindset goes even before the 8th century. So you'll find a lot of evidence there, right? We were the first people to open up the waters and for commerce, and found different ways for whether it's been the alphabet to the first for the first evidence of using coins for trade, and even our upbringing. And it was funny. I was talking to somebody a couple of nights ago. They're like, how was it growing up in Lebanon? And I said, if you take the security issues to the side, I wouldn't trade my childhood for anybody else. And it is those difficulties and challenges. You're a lot younger than I am, but I still remember all of that, and it's part of who I am. And the song is truly right. If it doesn't kill you, it makes you stronger. So my generation and people a bit younger than me and older, we grew up in an environment that was extremely challenging, but we always had the love and security of family around you, and the belief we're very optimistic people. We've been in a political limbo for, 40, 45 years now, but we always believe in a better tomorrow. And that is really critical, what you are when you are innovating, when you are an entrepreneur, because the setbacks, especially in the earlier times, can knock the wind out of you. And honestly, if people didn't have the upbringing and the challenges that we've had, you just raise your hands and go, okay, I've had enough, I'm done. But we keep getting knocked down. We still stand up on our 2 feet. We see, we're stubborn people too, right? Like we hold on to that vision, and we always want to do better. And that is critical because in innovation, as I said earlier, there isn't a blueprint, right? Like you're making it as you go. You're making 100 decisions a day, and you pray that you make one good one that's going to make that difference as you move forward. So I credit a lot my upbringing, my education, my surroundings, if you will, to the resiliency. And listen, I haven't had half the hardships and challenges that others have, and sometimes luck plays a big role in it. But clearly, our background as a people, as a nation, we always tend to see the world with a glass half full, and that's been our story of survival and success.
This legacy is being reflected today, specifically within modern fintech revolutions that is happening in the Middle East, with the UAE rapidly emerging as a global hub for digital assets and blockchain infrastructure. There's major investments pouring in. Abu Dhabi firm NeoVision is launching a tokenized US Treasury fund, and Dubai is securing a $1 billion asset tokenization deal with Mantra. The region is building a brand new infrastructure without this legacy challenges. How do you see the positioning of the Middle East in the broader financial ecosystem, and what do you believe is driving this momentum?
I think especially the UAE has been leading in this area. Abu Dhabi's motto is they want to be the capital of capital, and they certainly have done that. I had the privilege of leading a company called Securrency before we sold it to DTCC. Securrency is actually based in Abu Dhabi. We still have offices there, and they actually funded our earlier activities, and that was 10 years ago, right? So they were a big believer in incubation of good ideas, funding, looking at tokenization, and they were very smart at the get-go. And I think the newness, if you will, of those economies also helped. But you saw a very strong partnership between local government and entrepreneurs. They made their rules and regulations very welcoming to entrepreneurs around the world. So there's loads and loads of Lebanese entrepreneurs that you'll find in Abu Dhabi and Dubai and Saudi. Saudi as well has been on the scene in a very big way. They've been very smart. As you know, they've used the oil wealth and they've looked decades ahead, trying to figure out someday the oil is going to go away, not in your lifetime or mine, but someday it will. And they have been very earlier thinkers and strategically taking bets on things that they see the future, whether it's been solar energy, whether it's been the future of finance around data centers and AI and tokenization. So their geographical positioning as well is very helpful as they merge Europe and Asia and the Middle East together. They've got a young, extremely well-educated workforce, and they've got the capital and the will. You can't go wrong with that. And they've been doing really well in leading the efforts on that front. I go there a couple of times a year and fully come back fairly energized after I talk to the team on the ground, to the regulators, to the sovereign wealth fund. So there's a extremely very clear vision in a population that's like zeroed in on executing on it. And usually when you focus on one thing and you drive for it, that leads to success. So I will expect the Middle East to continue to play a very large role in these technologies as well in capital.
Do you believe that this momentum could become the blueprint for the future of tokenized markets and even maybe influence the way the US approaches it?
I think so. I mean, again, we live in a very global economy. Next week, there's a very large conference in Florida, and we will see a lot of the regulators from the UAE be there. And it's always a nice exchange between the U.S. regulators and the global regulators there. So, listen, we live in a global world, and the more these regulators talk to each other and collaborate, it just makes us more competitive. Finance is the one area where it's very hard to just
Yeah.
retrench into a local market. So the more globalization is better. But to have globalization, you also need a lot of collaboration and coordination. And I do expect the UAE and other areas in the Middle East to play their rightful role there.
And it's interesting to compare, just taking extracting lessons from the way things are today. We talked about the Hawala system, which is a network based on trust and network, and purely based on relationships, which is something that our culture thrives on. Just the word of mouth, the people to people approach. What lessons do you think we can drive from those historical models and the way business is done in that part of the world?
So while business in some part of the world is very transactional,
Hmm.
the one thing I still love about our culture in doing business in the Middle East, it is still, despite all the wealth, despite
Yeah.
all the technology, it's still very relationship driven. And in that relationship, there's trust. There is knowing that you can rely on me and I can rely on you. Now, technology is displacing some of that, but that doesn't mean it's not important, especially when you're sort of ideating around new ideas. And you need to trust me to give me the money and the leeway and the support to be able to do that. And I think that's why, to your earlier question, you see a lot of innovation coming out of the Middle East because there's that level of trust that goes in there.
Hmm.
So it's a different way of doing business. For us, it's normal. For some areas, maybe for some people, it's a little bit new. And it's not just, all right, let's sit down, let's have a meeting here, sign on
Yeah.
the dotted line. What I love about this is it takes a while. You gotta both parties prove themselves to each other, but eventually these are relationships that last decades,
Hmm.
and that's super helpful as you're trying to innovate and change the world to a certain extent. Technology will, I talked about blockchain. It is a trustless environment where, you've got your assets, they're secure, but nothing will ever take away from that human touch and human relationship. And that's, if it was all automated and mechanized, then
Yeah.
what's the point?
There's a lot to learn from there.
Absolutely.
Nadine, throughout your career, you've been at the forefront of innovations. You've sat in major room around discussions in digital assets and fintech, and you've been recognized multiple times, including receiving the Corporate Leadership Award from Techrim America and being recognized as American Banker's most powerful woman in finance. Leading through change, especially in fast evolving space, requires a lot of vision and resilience. What have been the most defining leadership lessons you've learned throughout your career, and how do you approach navigating such change and innovation?
That's a hard question.
Reflection.
Yeah, it is a hard question. I think when I think about it now, most of the things that I've done, there hasn't been a blueprint, right? So you
Hmm.
had to, the first thing is surround yourself with people that are much smarter. And I know it's a
Mm.
cliche, but I promise you it is true. Make sure that you can build a true team. Because listen, we sink and swim as one. And listen, I've always been blessed with the ability of making decisions with imperfect information, and I'm not too proud to admit, hey, I messed up. Apologize, understand what I did wrong, learn from these learnings, and move on. I wish I could tell you I've knocked it out of the park every single time. I have not. But when I look back, like all the things that I've done, I'm not going to lie to you. There are nights I've woken up in the
Hmm.
middle of the night going like, oh my God, what am I doing? So there's always that self-doubt that's there, but you never want to let them see you sweat. So
Mm.
you keep going. But when you have a good team around you, you want to communicate. You want to let people do what they're good at. I'm not good at a lot of things, but I'm good at certain things. So I
Mhm.
tend to focus on those. And then I use my network, if you will, to compensate for the things that I'm not not good at. But at the end of the day, the success is the team's success, the failure is mine. And working like that, we have been able to do that. But I've always been curious. I've always had grandiose ideas of what can and can't be done. I forget how it goes, but either you aim for the stars and settle for the moon, or vice versa.
Yeah.
But it's really truly like either think big or go home type of setup. And I've been more lucky of being in the right place with the right people. And to your point, I'm just very grateful for the career that I've had and the opportunities that I've had.
If there is a message or piece of advice you would like to pass on for this next generation of leaders or young people looking to break into the financial sector specifically, what would it be, and what skills or mindset or even strategies you believe would set them up for success?
I think we've talked a little bit about this throughout the chat. Never stop learning, right? Be curious, even if it's not in your job description. I mean, when blockchain started to become a thing, I signed up for one of these online classes at MIT, and I used to get up at 5 o'clock before I'd go to work and do that. It's not because somebody told me I had to do that. I just found it curious. So I've always had an affinity for, listen, I can barely turn my iPhone on, but I've always had an affinity for technology, which it's allowed me to dabble in it and ask what if. So I would tell this younger generation, just keep learning, because things are moving fast and nobody ever knows it all. Don't be afraid. Like, having the courage and the strength of your conviction is really important. If there's something out there that you want, don't let anybody tell you can't do it. And I promise you're going to have more setbacks than you're going to have successes, but you just need to hit it once. So keep at it. There's serial entrepreneurs out there that have had hundreds of attempts, and they fail, they dust themselves up and go back up and try it again. So and we're not entitled to anything, right? So we have to work hard at it. We've got to they've got to work harder than anybody else in the room, continue to learn, and don't be afraid of failure. Embrace it and keep moving. Just keep moving is important.
I'm even saving that advice for myself. As we look ahead, at least maybe the next 5 years, what is your biggest bet for the future of finance?
I'd hope to see a world that is totally on blockchain, totally tokenized, and AI really used to do a lot of the low-level jobs in the industry, and have these minds in the industry really start to look on how to innovate for the good as we move forward. But my hope is to see a lot more activity on really digital rails start to replace traditional infrastructure that's out there.
I would love to close out with a few rapid fire questions that you
I don't like those.
Use a word, a sentence. If you could change one thing about the financial industry today, what would it be?
Speed.
What's one book or resource that has deeply influenced you or your career?
This book called Blue Ocean, and I forget who wrote it, but I love that book. It's called Blue Ocean.
The strategy book.
That's right.
Yeah. If you had to sum up your leadership philosophy in a sentence, what would it be? Or word?
4 words or 1 word? My leadership, I think it's really set a direction and let people work to get to that end goal.
What lessons from Lebanese culture has shaped your personal or professional journey?
Grit.
Nadine, I thank you so much for sitting with us here today in New York.
Andrea, it's my pleasure. Thank you so much. It's an honor, and I'll see you at Tech Cream in April.
Yeah.
All righty. Thank you. Thanks a lot.